The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
What is up, everyone? Week 2 of Big 12 football is in the books. It was an eventful weekend once again in Big 12 football. We learned a lot more about these Big 12 teams in 2024 as the schedule had a lot more Power 4 competition. We'll break it all down over these next 2 hours. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry with you. And Alex, this was an eventful weekend of Big 12 football.
Happy Sunday, Mitch. This is the only way I want to spend my Sunday mornings. This and, you throw this and a little bit of church in the mix, you got yourself a heck of a Sunday, man. We got to talk Big 12 football on a Sunday morning. That's our new thing, man. So that's what we do. That's what we feel good about. And yeah, man, some scares across the Big 12. You've got all sorts of things that we can chop up. The power polls. We've already had some arguments, so we've had to go back and forth over. I'm excited about it. You're fresh off of the plane from Dallas after BYU's win over SMU. So let's jump in right here. We get to our first segment, of course, is always bringing you the biggest headlines across the entire conference. Let's get right to it.
12 headlines.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
The dozen storylines that shape this week of Big 12 football. Headline 1.
Utah was absolutely cruising against Baylor. It looked like it was going to be on its way to a 100-0 victory, but then Cam Rising, after what looked a little bit on the edge of being a late hit out of bounds, injures his throwing hand, Mitch, out of bounds on the water cooler. Now, it looked like he came back, and he was on the sidelines in good spirits, but I'm not sure what the full report is, except for that it absolutely stalled Utah totally. I know they were up 23-0, but that really did look like a nasty one. And man, Utah Nation, I had friends that were in those stands down at Rice-Eccles Stadium, and they went, the awkwardness in that building was palpable as soon as Cam Rising left the stadium and Isaac Wilson had to come in the game.
The entire tone of the game changed when Cam Rising hit that Gatorade cooler and injured his hand. But, Kyle Whittingham did say in the postgame that it was not real serious. But, next week at Utah State, if they might have to go with Isaac Wilson, and the offense was struggling. I mean, and that's a tough spot, getting thrown in, first Power 4 competition for Wilson and being thrust in at a moment's notice, but still a little bit worrisome and something to monitor going forward for the Utes. We'll talk more Utah and Baylor coming up a little bit later in the show. Number 2, Iowa State. Their kicker, Kyle Conradi, hits a 54-yard field goal to take down Iowa in the Cy-Hawk rivalry. The Cyclones trailed 19-7 under 5 minutes in the third. They win 20-19. Huge win for Matt Campbell's squad, and maybe they could be dreaming of playoffs. This was a huge win.
What's up with the year of the kicker? Everybody hitting 50-plus field goals for no problem. That one went through with an extra 5 or 8 yards to spare. That was a heck of a kick, and they escape and they get the win over Iowa. Oklahoma State, speaking of people who were a little bit nervous, this one went to overtime. Arkansas absolutely blew the doors off of Oklahoma State when it came to the yardage. Like, Mitch, if you looked at this box score and if you watched the actual highlights, Arkansas was the better team, but Mike Gundy is a wily dude, and he knows how to get the win, and they get the win in overtime. Ollie Gordon was not much of a factor. Write it down. Alan Bowman was the guy today for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. They get the win. They escape 39-31 after the 2-point conversion and the touchdown in overtime.
Yeah, that was significant that Alan Bowman led Oklahoma State, because we all know that Ollie Gordon's going to get his in many of these games. But for Bowman to win a game, that was pretty big for Oklahoma State.
He's felt disrespected, Mitch, mostly by this program.
On the downside, though, Oklahoma State lost one of their top linebackers for the year, Colin Oliver, so that'll be something to monitor. Number 4, I was in Dallas. BYU makes it clear with Brett Yormark in attendance that Dallas is still Big 12 territory. They take down ACC newcomer SMU in a slugfest. It was not pretty. 18-15, BYU gets the win over the SMU Mustangs.
All right, so here it is. This one was a nasty one. We'll get a ton into BYU, obviously. Houston almost goes into Norman and pulls off a possible upset, but special team mistakes actually lead to, this is what happens with teams. If you can pull off upsets when you have even a little bit of the stuff together, but that was a nice effort by the Houston Cougars, and it might move them up the old power poll this week just by making that effort against Oklahoma.
Yeah, they missed opportunities. They had a botched special teams for punt return, and Oklahoma, I know they're no longer a Big 12 member, but I'm telling you, I'm not sold on Oklahoma having success in year one in the Big 12. Kansas State, they needed some defensive heroics to escape New Orleans with a victory. They got a 60-yard fumble return for a touchdown, which gives the Wildcats a 34-27 win. It was a little bit of a revenge spot over Tulane because 2 years ago Tulane knocked off the Wildcats. They just escaped. It was a bad weather game. It was weird in the post game too. They had no visiting post game press conference. Kind of weird accommodations from Tulane, but
wow.
Kansas State escapes and gets a victory to stay unbeaten.
Colorado, in what may have been the nastiest game on TV yesterday in all of college football, they do not show up on the offensive side of things. Nebraska, on the flip side, I don't know. Matt Rule might be turning some things around there. They get the W 28-10, and they scored all 28 in the first half. Colorado couldn't move the football, Mitch, and they looked awful.
Yeah, the Colorado offense was abysmal. That was the first time where Coach Prime's Colorado team, where the offense was far inferior. Usually it's the defense, the trenches. Offensive line's still an issue, too, for Colorado, though. And Nebraska looked like they just manhandled the Buffs, and not a very positive outlook for Colorado going forward. We'll hear from Coach Prime coming up a little bit later this show. The Kansas Jayhawks have been viewed as, maybe a preseason dark horse to win the Big 12 Conference this year. They fall on the road at Illinois, so still some Kansas of old moments, not getting it done with the spotlight on them. They fall at Illinois. They allowed 10 unanswered in the fourth quarter. Jalen Daniels, the star quarterback, he tossed 3 interceptions this game. They had so many issues with not converting fourth and shorts. They just could not get it done against Brett Bielema and the Fighting Illini.
We were looking to move up Cincinnati this week, early on in this game that they took on Pitt this week, and you go, man, my goodness, they're going to go up in the power poll. Not so fast. They were up 27-6, and they blew the lead. Pitt gets the win 28-27 in Cincinnati. Looked like a lot like Cincinnati that we had on the power rankings before.
Yeah, I can't get a real sense of Cincinnati, who they are yet. I mean, I thought there were positive signs, and it was good to see Dante Corleone back in the lineup after, this offseason he had the heart issue where you thought he probably should just retire, but he's back in the lineup, had an impact for Cincinnati. But, that team I think is improving, but still not getting the job done. Those are the type of losses where, Scott Satterfield's been, fighting an uphill battle to win that fan base over, and you kind of missed out on an opportunity to win people over. Arizona State, what a huge night for them, and they've become one of the great stories in the Big 12 in the early part of the season. They built a huge first-half lead against Mississippi State. Cam Scadaboo rushed for 262 yards in the victory, and Arizona State gets their first win in program history over an SEC team. They took care of business, taking down Mississippi State.
Yeah, and it's not the SEC team that you want to write home about, but, I mean, my goodness, you take what you get. Kenny Dillingham fans are coming out of the woodworks, and I love it. I love the crowd being like, yeah, we've seen this before. We're walking away with a huge victory. I'm going home. I know it was hot temperatures, but you got to act the part, too, if you're going to be this year's West Virginia in the Big 12, Arizona State. So congrats to them. Number 10 on the list, Texas Tech getting crushed by Washington State. No Taj Brooks. That's a real problem. Like, we actually looked at this game and said, man, Texas Tech is going to have a hard time with Washington State, and that's exactly what happened this week.
Texas Tech is a mess right now. And, look, Washington State's a good football team. They're okay, but Texas Tech was not competitive in this game. Without Taj Brooks, they were completely lost. And there's just no fight. Typically in games you watch teams and you go, okay, they brought effort. Even Colorado, I saw effort for a full 60. Texas Tech, they looked down and out the whole game. Like they didn't want to be there on the Palouse. And, credit to Wazoo. they've been fighting to get into the Big 12's consciousness. They showed, hey, we're still a pretty good football team, and maybe down the road, if the Big 12 wants to completely forget the whole UConn thought, maybe look at the Wazoo and Oregon State. Hey, a big fourth quarter allowed Arizona to pull away from an upset bid by Northern Arizona, the FCS Lumberjacks. It took a safety and then a late touchdown in the fourth quarter for Arizona to get really comfortable, but kind of a closer call than expected for the Wildcats, who had such a big offensive performance in Week 1.
You don't really want to have that one happen after you put up 66 against New Mexico, but there are ugly wins along the way, Mitch. We know this, and Northern Arizona has a history of embarrassing the other big programs in the state and, frankly, other programs across the western United States. So there you go. All right, we'll take our first break on First and 12. Happy Sunday to you, and happy shopping. It's all brought to you by the folks at Macy's, who are proud sponsors of this program. And we're going to take a quick break here. We'll jump in. We've got a BYU game to break down. Mitch was down in Dallas. I did the pre- and post-game shows, and, man, we have a lot to talk about. We have tons to jump into. Mixed reaction from BYU fans, but they are 2-0. So stay right here. More to go. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone, and KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM. It is First and 12.